Okay, these new ones come with new gaskets, so you just have to line it up, and they only go on one way, so you'll be able to figure out how they go on. Don't get them confused left to right or right to left. But there's differences between them. See, this one has a little squiggle here, so you should be able to figure out, and they should fit fairly tightly. It should lay in the groove, and it should fit enough so that it holds itself in place. Okay, so I got the gasket all fit in the groove, and it looks like they will hold pretty well in there. So I'll try it first without putting any RTV. But just a note about this: you can buy these gaskets without buying the actual valve cover. I would not recommend that. I mean, some people I've seen online do this job just to replace the gasket. So you're taking apart half the engine, at least the top part of the engine, just to replace this gasket, and they cite the fact that they don't have any oil leaking in their spark plug wells. But to me, if you're going to go through all the trouble to take the damn thing apart, best to just get the valve covers and do the whole job. That way you prevent a future job having to do it again, because eventually these seals here are going to leak and you're going to get oil in your spark plug wells. It's just a matter of time, and for me, having to do this job over again shortly after would be a pain in the ass and not worth it. So it's $150 for the whole kit, for the two valve covers and the gasket that comes in the kit. So I mean, shoot, save yourself $100, $120 versus just buying the gaskets alone. Not worth it. Okay, when you're going to put the valve cover, I'm going to start with the driver's side here and put this valve cover on first. Now, to make it easier on yourself, get this wiring loom out of the way. So follow the wiring loom all the way back. It should be disconnected from everything other than very back here. There's one more connection, so just push down on the top and you can pop that connection off the back of the engine. And then this one black one here, so there's a gray one all the way at the end, and then this is black connection. Alright, so this connection at the back, this gray one that you can see here, hopefully that's in the frame. Nope, there it is. The gray one here is a normal push connection, so you just press down on this little tab here and pop it out. This black one is completely different. I don't know why they always make these stupid electrical connections different. This one has got this green tab here, and let me show you how this works, because it's kind of tricky to figure out. What you got to do is you got to push down towards the pins on this green part, and then you can pull it off of the connection. So it's kind of a tricky connector. What I'm going to do is there's one more connection I can now see on a little wire that goes down to the back of the engine, but I don't think I need to remove that one. I'm just going to tie these, get some zip ties or some string, and I'm going to just tie this wiring loom up so that it's out of the way. Okay, when applying the RTV, you just apply a dab down here in this corner, and then a dab up here in this corner. You can see I kind of made a cross with it, so go lengthwise and then go across this way in the actual groove of the corner, and that's the way the manual tells you to do it. Alright, so after you have the RTV in, you can place the actual valve cover in, and you want to seat it in like the back first, so kind of get the back in first. You might have to lift up this tube. There's a water line in the back here that's sort of in the way. You can lift that up and push it back. Make sure you don't catch the wires here for the fuel rail, and then push it down enough that it fits underneath the front here, and then slide it forward. And then press it down. Place. Okay, and this new seal will fit around these spark plug wells pretty well. So let me show you what that looks like. Right in here, the rubber will fit pretty tightly around the metal inside here of the spark plug well, so you'll feel it kind of pop into place. And you want to make sure that you got the gasket in over here. See, there's the actual cover and then the gasket, and you want to look around the whole of the outside and make sure the gasket didn't get wrinkled or pushed out of place when you were installing it. So I'm going to go around the whole edge and check the gasket to make sure it's sitting flat on the engine, in between the engine and the valve cover. Okay, so I have my inspection camera out, so I can get in here and make sure that this gasket is properly in place, because there's no way to get underneath behind here to figure out if it's properly installed. So I can go in here with this inspection camera and see perfectly well if the gasket is in place. So it's in the corner there, it's touching the RTV, and then just make sure as I go down the line I can see the gasket. So I can see the gasket in there sandwiched in between the two parts. That's good. Yep. Alright. So it looks like the gasket is fully in place, and now I will put the bolts back in, and I'll torque these down. You need to use your magnet to get these into place, and then use your finger to pop them off. Alright, now is the tightening procedure as far as how they want you to tighten these down. So on this side, it's number 1 is down here. Let me see if I can hold this. Number 1, number 2, number 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then 9 in the front, 10 in the back. So I'll leave a link to where you can find this. This comes from the shop manual. Okay, like I said, tighten down this one here. So 1, 2, 3 back here, 4, 5 up here in the front, 6 across, 7 down here in the back, 8, and then 9 up front, very front, and then 10 in the way back. So right now I'm just going to go ahead and thread them on, and then I'm going to torque them down in that order. Make sure you don't cross thread. You might have to use a smaller 1/4" drive on some of these. Like this one in the front is kind of a tight fit, so use a 1/4" drive and it gets in there. Okay, so it's a 2-step torque spec. Up here it says the first step is to tighten it down to 9 to 26 inch-pounds, and then the second step is you go through the same sequence and torque it down to 65 to 82 inch-pounds. This is inch-pounds, not feet-pounds. Make sure you don't crack the valve cover because it's just plastic, remember. So again, the pattern that I just showed you, and then do it one time at 9 to 26 inch-pounds, and then do it the second time at 65 to 82 inch-pounds. Okay, now over on the passenger side, I've gone ahead and wired the wiring loom here to keep it away from where I'm going to be installing the valve cover. I've also taken this is the fuel line here, the fuel pressure regulator, which goes back to the fuel rail, and that you don't want to bend this wire back here, but you can move it a few millimeters to get it out of the way. So I wired that up, and now the same process will apply to this one. I'm gonna put the rear of the valve cover in, and then level it out, and then push it forward, and then seat it into place here in the front. And again, I'm going to put down some RTV in this groove here and the groove on the bottom half here, and just like I did on the other side. Okay, so I got the RTV in there, and hopefully this one will go in fairly easy like the other one did. Just making sure the gasket's staying in. Okay. Okay. Oh, there we go. Okay, just gonna put my hand underneath to feel the gasket before I go ahead and lay it down, just because I had to do a lot of wrangling to get it in there. Let me feel this side. Okay, feels like the gasket stayed in place. I just need to move it aft enough to get under here. And move it forward. When you move it forward, make sure it's up high enough to not squeegee the RTV out of the way. And then move it forward and then press it down onto the RTV. And remember, you're going to have to press it down into these spark plug holes as well, because the gasket's going to fit around those. There we go. And it kind of pops in to place, and it's a nice solid feel with that those new spark plug well gaskets. Okay, so now I'll get up my inspection camera and make sure that the gasket's properly seated all the way around. Okay, this back corner is very difficult to get to, and I highly recommend you have a magnet on a stick. So you put the bolt on the magnet, the bolt head, and then you feed it down in here, and you have to put your hand around the back here, and you can barely feel the hole for where it's supposed to go into. And so once you get the magnet in there, you feed it into the hole with the magnet, and then you use your finger to pull it off the magnet, and so it stays in the hole. And then you need a 10-inch or a 10 millimeter on a 1/4 inch drive with a long extension and a U-joint in order to fit it down in there and then thread it on. So it'll take a while, but you can do it without removing that fuel pressure regulator back there and all those in the wiring loom. So that's preferred if you can do it that way. Okay, once you get the bolts torqued down, remember the pattern that we used, and after you get that done, you can start connecting some of these clips again. So there's these clips that are on the fuel injectors, and so you can push those through on the side here. They should just snap into place. 1 and 2 there, and then there's some over here. Snap that in, snap that in. Around the back, we took off this wiring harness, so this gray wire goes way in the back here, and then there's a black one that's just behind this, just underneath this vent here. So you push that one down, and then you can leave this. There's a nut or bolt that goes in right here to hold down the wiring harness at the back. You can leave that out until you get the coils in. So we'll go ahead and do that step next to get the coils in, and then start cleaning up some of the wiring around the valve covers. Okay, another job I decided to do while I'm in here is replace the coils. So here's an old coil, and here's a new one. These are QYL ignition coils. Bought them off of Amazon for a pretty decent price, and they were rated pretty well by the people who reviewed them. So you can see here, same, pretty much exact thing down to the rubber. It's all the same. It's got the same moldings on it and everything. So I'll replace the coils with these and put them into place here, and make sure that you gotta just make sure that the wiring harness connection is pointing the correct way. The coil can go either way, but the wiring harness won't fit, and also the bolt hole needs to line up with the bolt hole on the top of the valve cover. So I'll show you a close-up of that as I install one of these. Okay, so the spark plugs are all tightened down, and so this coil goes, you can see the mounting hole is over here. It might be behind. This might be in the way, so I'll move that out of the way. So there's the mounting hole. You just kind of seat these into place, push it all the way down. So you grab your bolts for the coils. And you just bolt it into place. It's a 10mm. Okay, so I got the breather, or all the coils in on this side and tightened down, and I'm going to put this breather hose on the back of this valve cover, because with the plenum on, it's going to be hard to get back here to tighten this one down. So I'm going to put that on, and I'll get my pliers and I'll move that clip. This one goes to the intake. And then there's another one over here that goes to the throttle body as well. These are water lines. There's a water line here, there's a water line here, and that's to throw heated water into the throttle body to keep it from freezing over during real cold temperature. So that's that. Now I'll go ahead and throw the bolt in that holds down this wiring harness, and I'll clip in the wires for each of the coils on this side. Okay, over on the passenger side, before you put this last coil pack in place, you'll put the bolt in here. There's a bolt that goes and holds down the wiring harness at the back here, so put that in first. But now that I got this back one tightened down, I can put all these coil packs in on the passenger side and tighten those down. Okay, above the number 2 coil pack, actually, shoot, number 3 coil pack is this bracket that has this blue electrical connection on it. So that is a bolt hole here on the valve cover. So you have to bolt that in, and then there's this clip that connects right here that holds the wiring harness to the valve cover. So you can clip that in place, and I can put that bolt in. Once you get that in place, you can clip in this, there's a black plug here that connects to this blue, this main wiring harness. And so you can slide that into place and clip it in. There we go. Okay, over on the driver's side, there's a couple more bolts to hold down the wiring harness here. So you got the harness here, and there's this metal here. So there's a bolt here, and same thing over here, wiring harness, and this metal bracket, and the bolt there. So those two you can attach and tighten those down. Okay, next we have this breather hose that goes in the front. So it just connects between the two halves. Okay, the next step is it's going to be to install the lower half of the plenum. So we got that here. Make sure it'll only go in one way, really. Well, it'll look like it might go on 2 ways, but it won't. So you have this breather hose that goes in the front, so make sure that's in the front, and you just place it on here, these two guide bolts, and then make sure it slides down evenly, and then you can move that fuel pressure regulator out of the way. There we go. Make sure it just seats down on there nice and straight. Okay, there's a 10 millimeter nut on the front and there's one on the back. I'll just finger tighten those down for now. And then get my Plenum Spacer. There's a gasket that goes in here, but I have this Motordyne Plenum Spacer, which again prevents heat from radiating up to the top part of the plenum from the lower. And so that goes on next. And then this cover, there's an arrow here that points to the front, so you know which way you go front. And on the Motordyne Spacer there's also some arrows here that point to the front. And so that goes on in the center. And then there's these long bolts that go down through. Alright, again here, in the shop manual has this diagram up here. You might not be able to see it in the picture, but basically there's 6 of them, so that the middle 2 gets tightened down first. So number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4 at the back, number 5, number 6 at the front, and then the very front nut 7, and then the back nut 8. Okay, so the spec on these is 9 to 10 foot-pounds for the bolts and the nut. It's kind of confusing because it's not in the actual write-up, but there's an overall picture that shows the whole plenum together, and it does have a spec there that shows 9 to 10 foot-pounds. Okay, once the plenum is attached, or the lower plenum, you can attach this bracket right here, which holds the wiring harness in place. Okay, now we're getting ready to put on the upper plenum. So remember here what connections you have. So at the back, this is obviously the bottom. You got 2 here for water lines, and then there's an electrical connection here, and then at the back here there's an air line, and those ones are the difficult ones to get to, so make sure you're thinking about those as you're installing this. Okay, under here you can see where that hose goes on the throttle body, and here's the clip, so you gotta, it helps if the tabs of the clip are pointed towards you over here on the driver's side of the vehicle, and then you can grab them and move it up. Now you got this hose right here that connects inside. For my application only, this won't be the same for all applications, but there's these spacers that go with this Motordyne plenum, and so you have to lift up and put those right below the 6 bolts that go through. Okay, these bolts go back in, but be careful because there's 2 sizes here for these 6 in the middle. So the long ones go to the back because this slopes down, and it's higher in the back than it is in the front. So you put those on, and I'll hand thread all of the bolts here and around the outside. Make sure you get them in the right spots because there are longer ones. For example, the one right here next to the throttle body is really long. So they all need to go back to where they came from. Hopefully you labeled them somehow so that you can get them all back in the right spot. Alright, here are the specs for how to tighten down the top plenum. There's an order to it, so the number 1, 3, 6, so I'll post this in the description so you can see what the order is. But follow the order and then tighten down to 44 to 61 inch-pounds is the spec. Once you get all these tightened down in the right order and to the right torque spec, you can start connecting on all the little hoses and everything that go around the outside. So there's a hose here, there's the wiring connection for the throttle body, so we put that into place. the back side of the throttle body, there's a vacuum line here that you push into place, and then okay, at the back here there's this clamp that goes on with one bolt to the upper plenum. Okay, so now the only thing left is to put the intake back together. So you got this one hose right here that you'll have to get on. Okay, you got to put the front of the filter box back in place, and in order to do that, you have to take the MAF off. It's easier to fit it in there with the MAF off. So you fit the box all together, and then you slide it onto the pipe here for the intake. Then connect the MAF wire connection again. This is all just blue tape, electrical tape, because the tape that was on there was really kind of flaking off and not doing so well. It had been in there and dried up and started to become brittle. So I took that off and I just replaced it with this electrical tape that I had. As far as other things to make sure you connect, there's two bolts here. There's the clips right here that connect to the wiring harness. So connect those all together. There's a negative terminal here that connects right onto the front of this bolt. So that goes into the wiring harness here. Over on the other side, I think I already talked about this bracket up here that connects to the wiring harness. The PCV valve tube, if you're not doing the catch can mod like I'm doing here, just make sure you connect that tube back in from the PCV valve to the inlet here of the plenum. And I'll explain the catch can, oil catch can, in another video. Let's see, what else? After that, there's the front piece that connects on here for the intake. There's another piece that connects on with some plastic snap rivets here for the front of the airbox. And then there's putting the plastic shroud on top of the engine, if you still have one. And that's it. That's everything as far as completing the job of removing all the parts and pieces that need to be removed to get to the valve covers. Replace both valve covers and the gasket. Replaced the coils for the spark plugs, and that's it. Hope it helps out, and hope you enjoyed.